It had been 3 years since I'd last seen Briggs, and yet the moment he stepped into the room of my uncle's retirement party, everything inside me shifted like a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. He moved through the crowd with that same casual stride he'd always had, like the world wasn't in a rush, and neither was he. His hair was shorter now, his jaw more defined, but the laugh was the same. Low, honest, dangerous. Briggs had always been my cousin, but never just my cousin. We were close in that way only kids with chaotic families could be, tight like glue because the rest of the world kept cracking around us. He was a year older, taller, louder. I was quieter, the observer. Even as kids, I watched him more than I admitted, studied the way he made people feel seen without trying. He could get away with anything. And he did. We hadn't talked much in recent years. College, different cities, jobs that bled into weekends. But when we locked eyes across that crowded backyard, something unspoken pulled tight between us. He crossed the space like it hadn't been years, clapped me on the back and said, "Damn, you've changed." I hadn't. Not in the way that mattered. The night stretched on with grilled food and family stories recycled for laughs. Briggs and I sat at the far end of the porch, beers in hand, shoulders brushing every so often. It felt like falling back into a place I thought I'd grown out of. I listened as he talked about his construction gig, the cabin he was renovating out by the lake, his new truck. He asked about my job at the design studio, nodded like he understood, even though I knew he didn't care about color palettes or corporate branding. As the crowd thinned, a lazy wind kicked up. I started gathering my things, half ready to make the hour-long drive back home, when he tilted his head toward me. "You're not driving back tonight," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. "I've got stuff tomorrow." I lied, unsure of why I felt suddenly off balance. "Come on. It's late. You've had 2 beers, and I've got the whole place to myself now that Mason's moved out. You can crash in his old room." The air between us paused. There was no reason to say no. We'd shared beds at family reunions, camped out in tents, dozed on couches side by side growing up. But now it felt different. Or maybe I did. Still, I nodded. "Yeah, okay." His place was 20 minutes from the party, tucked into a quiet part of town. It was cleaner than I expected. Exposed brick, dim lighting, the smell of cedar and detergent. He tossed me a shirt to sleep in. "You still sleep in your jeans, man?" I laughed, grateful for something to break the tension. I changed in the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror. My heartbeat felt off, like I was walking into something and couldn't name what. When I stepped out, he was already in his room, lights off, the glow of a phone screen lighting up one side of his face. I hovered by the doorway. "Room's yours," he said. "Unless you're scared to bunk with me again." That old teasing tone. Safe. Familiar. And yet, my pulse thudded anyway. "Not scared," I said, sliding into the other side of the bed. "Just older. Might snore now." "You always snored." We laughed, the kind of laughter that fills a space and leaves it warmer. Then it was quiet. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. I couldn't tell. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, aware of every inch of distance between our bodies and how small that distance really was. "I miss this," he said suddenly. His voice was low, not sleepy, soft, like it had weight. "What? This? Us?" The air turned dense. I swallowed. "Yeah," I managed. "Me too." Neither of us said more. He shifted slightly, his arm brushing mine. Not an accident. Not this time. My breath caught. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a whisper, and inside, I lay frozen beneath the sheets, wondering what line we had just stepped over, or if we'd always been standing on it. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like family. I felt like something else. Something neither of us was ready to say out loud. The night pressed on, thick with silence and the subtle rhythm of 2 bodies trying not to move too much. I stared into the dark, counting his breaths beside me. Not even a hand's width separated us. That closeness wasn't unfamiliar. We'd shared beds as kids, but this wasn't the same. My skin buzzed like a live wire, and every second felt heavier than the last. Briggs spoke first. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it reached me like a shout. "Do you ever think about what life would have been like if we'd grown up in the same town?" I turned my head slightly, unsure if he could see me in the dark. "Yeah," I said. "I think about it sometimes." He exhaled hard, like he'd been holding that thought inside too long. I don't know. Feels like we got pulled apart right when things were about to get real. I wanted to ask what he meant, real how, but I was afraid of the answer. Or maybe I was afraid I already knew. He shifted, and suddenly his fingers brushed against the back of my hand. Just for a second, I froze. Then it happened again. A light touch, slower this time, like he was tracing the edge of a question he couldn't quite ask. I didn't move. Couldn't. I felt every cell in my body pulling toward him while my brain screamed to keep the boundary intact. He was my cousin. He was straight. At least, that's what he'd always said. So what was this? He spoke again, softer now. You ever wish things were different? I swallowed hard. Different how? Briggs didn't answer right away. Instead, he rolled onto his side, facing me. I could feel the weight of his gaze, even in the dark. My heart drummed in my ears. I don't know, he said finally. Sometimes I think maybe I've been living in a way that isn't mine. Like, I'm playing a role, doing what I think I'm supposed to. I turned to look at him, though I still couldn't see much more than an outline. That's a heavy thing to admit. I've never said it out loud, he replied. Not to anyone. The space between us seemed to shrink without either of us moving. Then, carefully, he reached out and placed a hand on my chest, right over my heart. It was the gentlest touch, but it hit me like a wave. Not lust, not even desire. It was longing, deep, bone-level longing for something unspoken, forbidden, unfinished. My throat tightened. Briggs. But I didn't pull away. He didn't speak again. Neither did I. We just stayed like that, his hand over my heartbeat, both of us breathing in the dark, too afraid to ask for more and too afraid to let go. The silence wasn't awkward. It was charged, sacred even. After what felt like a lifetime, his hand slipped away, and he rolled onto his back. I felt the chill instantly, the absence of him like a door closing. Still, sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept looping every word, every glance, every breath from earlier in the night. I kept asking myself what it meant. If he was just confused. If I was imagining it. If I crossed a line. Or if maybe we both had together. Around 4 a.m., I got up to get a glass of water. As I passed his room on the way back, I noticed his door had been left cracked open. Not wide, just enough that if I wanted to step in, I could. I didn't. Instead, I lay awake on the couch, the ceiling above me unfamiliar and the silence in the house louder than ever. Everything had shifted, and I had no idea what came next. By morning, nothing would be the same. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, too bright, too honest. I blinked against it, eyes heavy from a night of near sleep and relentless thoughts. The house was quiet, the kind that isn't peaceful but hollow. I half expected Briggs to still be asleep, maybe stirred by the same restlessness that had kept me pacing through my own head. But when I shuffled into the kitchen, he was already there, coffee brewing, phone in hand, acting like nothing had happened. "Morning," he said, voice light, casual. He didn't look at me. "Hey," I replied, searching his face for any sign of last night. His hand on my chest, those whispered words, but there was nothing. Just the same smirk he wore when he was deflecting. I reached for a mug, heart pounding. "So, about last night," he interrupted with a chuckle. "Man, I was out of it. Think I mixed my allergy meds with beer or something. Slept like a corpse." Then he glanced over, finally meeting my eyes. "I didn't say anything weird, did I?" His tone was joking, but the undertone wasn't. It was a warning. I stared at him, unsure what game we were playing. "No, nothing weird." The lie burned on my tongue. He gave a satisfied nod, like we'd just solved a minor misunderstanding. Like we hadn't stood on the edge of something vast and unspoken. That morning he was all energy, making eggs, talking about fixing up his truck, asking if I wanted to hit the river later. I played along, tried to match his rhythm, but it felt like I was watching a performance. Like he'd woken up, found the door, cracked open, and slammed it shut before the truth could creep in. By early afternoon, he invited over a girl named Jade. Said she lived a few streets down, that they'd hung out a couple times. I nodded, pretending it didn't sting, even though her name hadn't existed in last night's silence. She arrived all sunlight and perfume, laughing too loudly at his jokes. They cracked beers on the porch while I sat inside, pretending to scroll through my phone, pretending not to hear her say, "You're so bad," when he teased her, pretending not to hear him whisper something that made her squeal. I looked through the window at him, his arm around her, fingers playing with her hair. And then, like he felt me watching, he glanced up. For half a second, our eyes locked. His expression didn't change, but I saw it, the flicker of guilt, or fear, or maybe recognition. Then he looked away. Later, when Jade went to the bathroom, I stood up to leave. I couldn't stay there, not in that house, not in that space he'd filled with denial and distraction. "You leaving?" he asked, stepping in front of the door like he could block me with his body alone. "Yeah," I said, grabbing my bag. "Got some work to finish up." He frowned. "You don't gotta be weird about it." "I'm not being weird. You're acting like something happened," he said, lowering his voice. "Nothing happened." I met his eyes. "Did it feel like nothing to you?" He didn't answer, just stepped aside and let me pass. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd stood so close and said so little. About the girl, the act, the erasure. About how he reached out in the dark, then turned on the lights and called it a dream. But what hurt more than what he said was what he refused to say at all. Weeks passed, then months. Seasons shifted, and the air turned cold without ceremony. I didn't hear from Briggs, and I didn't reach out either, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what we were anymore. Cousins? Strangers? Something suspended in the space between who we were and who we pretended to be. His silence said more than words ever could. And yet, there were nights I'd stare at my screen, thumb hovering over his name, heart heavy with questions I had no right to ask. What did it mean to miss someone who had erased you from the version of their story they chose to tell? Eventually, I gave in. Just one message. Simple. Careful. "I miss you, but I can't keep pretending that night didn't mean something." He took a day to respond. "I think you're reading into things." I was out of it. "Don't twist it." And just like that, the air left my lungs. I read the message again and again, each word a scalpel. Not because they surprised me. No, I prepared for rejection, but because they rewrote the memory. He wasn't just denying what happened. He was denying me. That was the betrayal. Not the way his fingers had lingered on mine, or the warmth of his hand on my chest in the dark. Not the half-confession wrapped in longing, but the way he buried it under denial. The way he decided that what we shared was a ghost that never deserved a name. I didn't reply. What was there to say? Some part of me still hoped he'd show up at my door, or at least send something honest. A single sentence, an apology, anything to break the silence with something that felt like truth. But nothing came. And so, slowly, I let him become a memory. Life moved forward. I started dating again. Tentative at first, then steadier. I met someone kind, Devin. He didn't confuse me. Didn't make me doubt every glance, every word. Devin made space for me to breathe, to speak, to feel. And in that space, I realized how small I had let myself become for Briggs. Still, healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes the past taps you on the shoulder when you least expect it. It happened at another family gathering, my aunt's 60th. The backyard was filled with folding chairs and string lights, laughter bouncing off the trees. And then there he was, Briggs, across the lawn, wearing that same denim jacket, holding a soda, surrounded by uncles and cousins like nothing had ever cracked between us. He saw me. Our eyes met. He gave a nod, a crooked smile like we were fine, like we were whole. I nodded back. Nothing more. We didn't speak. Not really. Just exchanged polite hellos, empty as cups that had once held something warm. I watched him laugh at someone's story. He didn't look sad, didn't look haunted, and maybe he wasn't. Maybe he'd convinced himself none of it had ever happened. Maybe it was easier that way. Later, as I walked to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. For a second, I thought it was him. Thought he'd say something, anything. But it wasn't. Just another cousin, waving goodbye. Briggs stayed behind. Driving home, I let the window down and let the cold rush in. It felt clean, honest. Some people live behind locked doors, terrified of what's on the other side. Others walk through, even if it's messy, even if it hurts. I used to wait on his side of the door, hoping he'd open it. But now I realize I'm already through. I made it. He'll always be a chapter one returned to in quiet moments, a page I reread, not to relive, but to remember. Some stories don't end with closure. They end with understanding. And in that, there's peace.